The current time is 2 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Desmond Martin. I'm the program coordinator at NextWaveSTEM, and this is another one in our series of free webinar PDs over the course of the summer and now getting into the fall, how to teach drones remotely. We are so excited to have you with us because this is a chance for us just to share a little bit about our passion for emerging technologies and also to encourage you to, even with your students who can't be in school right now, engage them with emerging technology and not just any old technology, but something that's at the forefront of industry in the future, something that's really going to pique your students' interest and something that's going to be plain old fun. I'm really excited to dig into how we can engage our students with emerging technology at a distance. But before I get ahead of myself, there are a few housekeeping things. First and foremost is that today is a webinar. That means that while we love to see your smiling faces, we know that you're camera ready. You've been drinking that honey tea and that those voices sonorous and wonderful. Even though we know all those things are true, we won't be able to see your face and we won't be able to hear your voices. That does not mean that you are voiceless, however. You can chime in with your questions and your comments in the chat. The Q&A functionality is also open. So if you want to keep something off the record, we can also answer any of your questions from there. Second bit of housekeeping is with regards to PD credit hours. The PD certificate will be going out after today's webinar, and that is for our Illinois educators only. We're partnering with other states to be able to certify PD credits in those states as well. But if you just need something to verify your attendance in the PD today, everyone will be receiving that email with respect to the PD credit hour. Also, you will be receiving a follow-up email that has the PD credit certificate as well as a copy of today's recording and slide deck. So if you just want to use that as a positive resource going forward, something to refer back to, that will be at your disposal. So with all of those things taken care of, we will go ahead and jump right into today's webinar. And a great place to begin is at the beginning. Just to speak a little bit more about who we are at NextWaveSTEM, what we believe and why that's important. And the core of what we do at NextWaveSTEM really focuses on the future of young people. We believe that our world really desperately needs innovators. If we hear something else about a global pandemic, we wouldn't be too soon. If we never heard it again, it will be way too soon. And we understand that that problem is a problem that requires technical solutions. Our world is going to continue to face problems that require technical solutions in the future. We're going to need mathematicians, engineers, technologists, scientists, artists, policymakers, all kinds of professionals who are really astute in emerging technologies coming together to solve some of the world's most pressing problems. And you, yes, you, as educators are the most key component to making that future reality. If our students don't have teachers to teach STEM, they won't learn STEM, and we will be sorely missing those future professionals to help solve these problems. And to say nothing about that, it's just good sense to prepare our students for a future that they may not even be able to see that's coming. Good STEM jobs, careers, and solutions for the future. We believe that through our offerings at NextWaveSTEM, K through 12 curricula, professional development, equipment, we think of it as an all-in-one package. We can get you to a place where you're empowered to prepare students for the future. So we have two primary goals for today's webinar. And we're going to get into the weeds a little bit and talk about some specific technologies, but we'll also do a little bit of background and think about how STEM and drones can be used generally to support our students' learning. This is that we're going to learn how to use the TelloEDU application to teach concepts using drones. TelloEDU is our drone. It is also our software suite that allows for coding. If you've never coded before, if you've never flown a drone before, you're perfect. TelloEDU is made for you, and your students will find it really, really engaging. The second thing we want to be able to do is understand an effective remote learning instructional model. A lot of us have had limited experience with regards to remote learning. Um, some of us may have had a little bit more experience, but what we know is that in the course of just a few months, just a snap of the fingers, almost all of us have had to make an adjustment to becoming online instructors. We want to explore an instructional model that really works for online learning and that allows your students to engage with this technology and really be effective towards your learning goals. So we will go right ahead and jump on in. And the first thing that's important for us to understand is the coding environment. What do I mean by coding environment? Using drones, flying drones, that is one set of skills that's going to be really important and really useful for students to use. But what's going to be even more critical is that our students are not just consumers of technology, but they're also producers of technology. That means that our students are going to simply have to learn how to code. And our drone programs that you introduce to your students should be the kind of programs that allow them to explore concepts in computer science as well. So where should we begin? Well, let's first understand what a drone is. And the way that we think about a drone isn't necessarily just coming from Webster's definition. I've done that before. What is useful to understand is the basic idea of what a drone does. We can honestly understand what a drone is by what it does. So if you have no idea how to define a drone, it's really, really simple to make it concrete. A drone is a flying robot, and that's a loose definition. It's honestly too general, but for 90% of drones that exist in the world, and for 99% of the drones that your students might actually fly, both in their learning careers, in their academic careers, and in their professional careers, it's going to be a flying robot. So if your students have ever built any kind of robot or ever coded any kind of robot, be that Lego Mindstorms or Vex IQ, or if they participated in a robotics competition, or here in Illinois, the Shed Aquarium here in Chicago does a competition with underwater robotics. If your students have participated in robots in some kind of capacity before, then when we add in the component that the robot has to fly, congratulations, you're working with a drone. Now, that distinction is important because when we start to have robots that fly, there become federal regulations that we have to pay attention to. There are new safety concerns that we have to be worried about. It's very, very different to have the robot in our classroom that navigates its way along the table as opposed to something that could be flying over our students' heads or our heads. Those things change. But at the core of what a robot physically does, or what a drone physically does, it is a flying robot. And that flying robot also, generally speaking, does something really, really simple, follows a simple directive. It goes from here, wherever here is, to there. Flying robot's job is to move. The drone's job is to move. Now, as it moves, it may move in different ways. Your robot may have a difference in the number of propellers that it carries. It may not be a propeller robot at all. It may be a fixed wing drone, something that we're really akin to seeing used in military applications. It may carry different equipment. It may carry packages like the drone that we see in this photo. It may carry cameras. It may carry infrared equipment to help us fight some of those fires that we're seeing in California. It may carry fire hoses also to help fight some of those fires we might see in California. It may be walking your dog, but at the beginning and at the end of the day, the drone's main job is to move from one location to another location. And as it's moving from those locations, it's deploying those equipment. That might be Wi-Fi antennas, that might be payloads like packages, that might be, once again, fire hoses, that might be actually picking up people for search and rescue applications. But this is what a drone does. It moves autonomously. That means without human input and interference, it is able to change its position by flying through the air. And when it does that, it carries some particular equipment. And that's generally useful information for some of us who might not have a whole lot of experience with flying drones. When we think about the drones that your students might work with, it's really, really important to get a sense of something that's approachable. A question that we get all the time with regards to drone flying is, how do I know it's safe? And this is a question that's so important that we've actually come into jurisdictions here in the United States where certain funds cannot be allocated for the purchase of drone programming because of this idea of the technology not being safe. Something is flying around my head. We've seen it used in military applications before. I've seen a YouTube video of somebody getting hit in the head with a drone as they were flying. And these are valid concerns. The way we answer that is to understand what is and actually isn't safe about our drone. It's education. With the TelloEDU drone, we're talking about the drone that's about the size of a small dinner plate. So I guess you might call that a salad plate. It's about 80 grams. That's about 2.8 ounces. Why is that a good thing? It's extremely soft. It's softer than a baseball. It's also smaller than a Frisbee. And it's so small and so soft that it's the kind of drone that you can fly indoors, which is really important for our students who are perhaps sheltering in place and are doing remote learning, for a classroom situation where we may not have a plethora of space to be able to fly in. We may only have the gym available to us, or maybe even our classrooms available to us. This allows us the chance to really have access to the equipment where we can have one drone or multiple drones flying in an enclosed space. At NextWaveSTEM, we conduct courses not only training teachers and selling curricula, but also teach students in both in school time and out of school time courses. I personally have seen 6 of these drones in a classroom flying at the same time. It resembles a World War II battle, but it's the coolest thing in the world to see your students knowing that they can be in their classrooms operating these drones safely. Now, I mentioned the drone before. The drone is important because it's accessible. It's something that you can use in the classroom really effectively, something that your students can use and is approachable. But the drone is also really important because it's not just a toy, it's a scientific and computer science tool. So, with our drone that's connected to a device like an iPad or even a smartphone, we can fly the drone manually, take recordings, and take pictures, and all those things are good. But what's even more important is the ability to actually code our drone to fly autonomously using a connected application. That's an application that can run on your iPad, an application that can run on your smartphone, an application that can run on your Chromebooks. Your students get away from just doing a cool thing to thinking mathematically, thinking about logic, thinking about coding and programming syntax, actually simulating the flight of the drone, which becomes a really, really important component when we think about remote education for drones. Recording data from the sensors on the drone, being able to measure air temperature and barometric pressure. We open up an entirely new world with what the drone is able to accomplish based on our students' ability to get away from just flying the drone to actually programming the drone, giving our machine, giving our flying robot instructions that will follow on its own. So that's all fine and good. But we have this big question now. What's an example of a drone activity? And I actually just want to pause for a second. I know we're not completely full up here with participants, but I'd like to hear from some of you. What's an example of an activity that you would like to see your students doing with a drone? And we just got a comment in. Hey there, Mary. Thanks again for joining us. Just got a Chromebook for Equatia and read and write. Ooh, that's really, really cool. Um, Definitely encourage you to check out all the different things you can do in your Chromebook. Some professional development we haven't done yet is on Chromebooks and how honestly good that they've gotten, how much they've expanded in their capabilities. Many Chromebooks are also able to run native Windows applications applications. That's something that I'm excited to test out a little bit more as well. But I want to open this question up for our participants, and I'll just give a minute. What's an example of an activity that you would like to see your students do with a drone? And it doesn't have to be anything that's even a hard and fast. Okay, we're absolutely going to do this. Oh, that's really cool, Mary. Photo in a jungle that you can't get through. I love it. Actually, using that drone as an extension of our human senses. That's a really great example of a positive way to use the drone. I'm going to give us another 30 seconds for us to maybe think of some ideas. Yeah, find pyramids and such. Absolutely. Exploration becomes a very interesting concept when we think about drone usage. We have to think about it ethically as well. It's the kind of stuff that we thought about in science fiction for years and years, and now we're seeing it become real life science. So we got some really good ideas there. Um, for us, we believe that uh, a lot of the examples that we have here, exploration, doing surveyor work with drones becomes something that our students can actively practice and engage when we think about their open source resources. Open source mapping, the Google Maps API is actually free and available to use. It's as simple as navigating to Google Maps, Earth, Apple Maps. Some of us are still MapQuest users. Um, this is really powerful because it gives us an idea of the physical space that our drones can navigate in, and it gives us the ability to even simulate the flights of our drones through physical spaces. It lets us, really importantly, know information about distance. So for our students who are regulated to their physical location, maybe in their home, in their apartment, it may be a dense urban area or maybe extremely rural. The ability to tap into map information and simulate the flight of the drone um, in these locations becomes an interesting learning opportunity, even when we think about the three-dimensional nature of flights. Okay, so an example of an activity that we would do with our students, both in person with the drone and also through via simulated flight, is the idea of exploring a location, just like Mary mentioned. This is a local park just right around the corner from where I live, and teaching students really practical information about how to use digital tools, digital mapping tools. For example, what is a bar scale? What kind of information does it give us? How does it change and how does it scale? Allows us to do something as simple as create a flight plan for our drone. It might be as simple as flying the drone in a pattern around a park. And the question becomes, okay, what would this actually look like in block code? How would we execute this? Well, this is the part that really gets exciting for me because I get to change up our view a little bit and show you TelloEDU in action. So just having changed my screen, what you should see is a coding environment. This is the TelloEDU app opened up. That could be running on your Chromebook. This could be running on your iPad. This could be running on your cell phone. TelloEDU works as a block coding application. Scratch block coding is really, really powerful for our beginning computer science learners because it's not about typing it out. It's not about understanding the wording perfectly. It's not about making sure all of our semicolons and commas are where they need to be. For a lot of us as educators, that's really important because we may not have even the most robust computer science background ourselves. But block coding works by allowing us to actually drag and drop code blocks. The snippets of information themselves are self-contained into these blocks as instructions for our drones to follow. So block coding becomes a really, really powerful introductory language for our students to learn. I can actually give our drone some instructions. I'm going to tell my drone that I want to take off. There are different menus here for me to pull from. Motion blocks allow me to control how the drone might move. Control blocks control the actual logic and the order of the instructions I'm going to give the drone. Um, and I'll demonstrate that actually in this code as well. We can get into algebraic thinking with variables. I can actually create mathematic and sensor variables inside of the code as I'm flying. That's really, really powerful. We won't dig into that during this demonstration, but that's something I'd love to show off. Operators allow us to get really, really precise, our basic operations, but also we can do things like create Boolean arguments. If that went over your head, that's kind of like those and or, both these things have to be true for this next thing to happen. We can do maximum values in between two numbers, minimum values, lots of cool stuff in the math blocks. And then we can also access our sensors. A lot of the actual machinery inside the drone that allows it to fly stably are like the same kind of things that you would find inside of your smartphone. An accelerometer tells the drone how quickly it's moving in any given direction. A gyroscope allows the drone to know how much it's turning and tilting in any given direction. Those two sensors are also inside your cell phone. That's how Google Maps work. If you didn't know that, your phone is communicating and sensing how much it's tilting and how fast it's going in any direction, and that's how you can get to that next pizza pickup. But our drone also has a thermometer. It has the ability to measure how high it is in the air. All of these things we can have access to as we're coding. So in our plan, we want to get around our park in a rectangular pattern. Well, I can give my drone some really basic instructions to get it to do just that. I've got it taking off, so it'll already get in the air. I'm going to grab a repeat block. So instead of programming in a bunch of different instructions over and over again, instead, I'm going to grab a snippet of instructions. I'm going to tell the drone to go forward, and then I'm going to tell the drone to yaw to the left. That's a technical aeronautical term for turn to the left to actually rotate. And I'm going to have it repeat those two instructions 4 times. So just using the block coding, I've given my drone some really basic instructions for how I want it to move. I've got it taking off in the air, and it's going to repeat these instructions here 4 times. Go forward, and then yaw to the left. And I'm missing something really, really important, which is after it's done all that, I want the drone to land. That's particularly important as we're flying the drones in person in our classrooms, because if we forget the land block, the drone is only going to be able to do what we tell it to do, just like any machine. If the drone is in the air and it's repeated moving, and we don't tell the drone to land, it will hang in the air, just hovering, which is not the worst thing in the world. It kills our battery, but it might put us in a position where we have to retrieve our drone manually. Once again, not the end of the world at all, but something we want to avoid if we don't want to waste a charge on the drone. So our simple drag and drop. Notice I've done no typing there. I didn't have to worry about a semicolon or a comma. I didn't have to write any HTML or any JavaScript or any Python. This is code that's ready to be executed. We can connect to our drone, execute this code, and our drone is flying and being really, really awesome. What students don't have access to the drone? How can we actually get them involved? Well, clicking this little eyeball button down here at the bottom gives us access to a drone simulator. This is really, really powerful. So for our students who are not connected to a physical drone, once again, who are learning at distance, this drone simulation becomes their way of seeing the drone in action. Pressing this button that says tap to start, our drone is actually executing the code, and we can see in real time as the drone is executing the commands that I just gave it. Just a simple repeat of the instructions, and then it ends up landing exactly where it took off from. So that becomes the powerful thing that we can do with our drones, is that we can plan our flights. We can give ourselves some constraints and some scenarios, choosing different locations. and build in flights that our students are able to code and actually execute. That is really the robust way in which the drones become much more accessible to our students. So now going back to our slide presentation, what we showed off here is kind of this idea, thinking logically with the code, dragging in motion blocks. Maybe we have a really particular measurement for how far our drone has to fly. In our example that I just showed, I left the actual distances as just being those 100 centimeters. But in the real world, we would take time to measure those distances and program in our codes accordingly. Just had a really good question from Doreen. Can you change the scenery and background? At this point, you can't change the background just as of yet, Doreen, but I think that's something that the developer is working on. I've been shooting emails to our developer for this application for quite a while now. So if I get some information about that, that's something I'll be sure to update. Really good question. I'm not sure why they chose Egypt with the pyramids back there, but it is fun. I agree that would be more interesting with the kids. We would love to see that change implemented soon. So as we're thinking logically with the code, we have the ability to really dial in and get precise with where we want the drone to fly, even in our simulation and with our drones connected in the real world as well. For example, in our actual park that we've been able to manually change or measure with our bar scale, what we've seen is this ability now to really get in depth with our operators. Our drone is programmed in metric units, but there's no reason that without using a little bit of math, understanding our conversion, we can convert from metric units of centimeters to feet. That's kind of the math that you see going on down here. Got a conversion factor going from 1 foot being equal to 609.6 centimeters. Don't worry so much about the math, but we've got our drone programmed now to fly a particular distance. They didn't use the repeat block, or I didn't use the repeat block as I coded this example. Here we see how our code can be laid out in each individual step so that our students are able to execute this flight in the real world. Mary just asked a really good question about accessibility with respect to colorblind or color sensitive colors. The answer is yes. Those settings don't live on the application. They live in our device settings. So any device that you're using, if that's a laptop or a Chromebook, that could also be your cell phone, or it could also be your iPad. If you dig into your device settings, you're able to turn on your colorblind sensors. The app will follow suit. So that way there's accessibility built in with what your students are able to see. Really good question. We haven't gotten that question very often, but we appreciate the need to be sensitive to our different student populations. So lots of information there, kind of showing off the technical capability of our drones, and that's only one part of the story. We have to think a little bit more in depth about what it means to use the technology at a distance with our students. How are students able to interact with the technology, and what does that look like potentially if we're executing a lesson? At NextWaveSTEM, we believe it's important to create a plan that works at distance that you are familiar with, that's repeatable, that creates an expectation for our students so that they can actually, in this situation, particularly when we think about distance learning, start to build expectations for how this lesson is going to go for the time that they see us in the virtual instruction. And that helps to lessen the cognitive load of what our students are going through as they're transitioning and working through their virtual learning experience as well, whether that's on Zoom or Google Hangout however you might be meeting with your students. We know that it's a load for them to transition from what they may have been doing or what they were definitely doing when they were meeting you in person. So we create a instructional plan that engages, explores, explains, elaborates, and evaluates. Just got a good question here from Doreen. What age and grade levels do you suggest for this? For drones, for actually dragging and dropping, coding with drones, being able to simulate and connecting with our drones in person. We've got courses that are designed for ages or really grades of 3rd through 12th. We've got course on age appropriate uh, curricula for those different grade bands. So that becomes something that's really accessible. If your students are able to drag and drop, something that I like to say is that if your students can play Fortnite, they can fly the drone manually. If your students can play Candy Crush, they can program the drone. It just comes down to their ability to interact. The actual content itself, being able to understand and execute, is not that far beyond them or you as an instructor at all. Yes, they can play Minecraft for sure. If your students can play Minecraft, they can absolutely code a drone to fly autonomously. So digging a little bit deeper into our actual instructional model, our 5 E's of instruction, we think about the back and forth that you'll have in a live instruction and the learning that it can be done with your students as remote learners, but also in their small group learning. There's a lot baked in here that we also like to expand upon when we think about the actual tools that are at our disposal. A lot of those tools that we've had to become experts in and are continuing to receive professional development on, even as we get into the very beginning of this new school year. So when we think about 5E instructional model, we've got the story about how the students' attention moves and who their peers are and how their communication changes. It starts off with whole group direct instruction with a live instructor. We know that teachers are being asked to be so much, or your students emotional counselors when they come to see you when they're transitioning. You're become attendance takers and truancy officers as well, unfortunately, in some situations. But when we think about our whole group direct instruction, where you're traditionally in front of a camera working with a student, that's the opportunity to engage the students, thinking about the real world problems and real world scenarios in which their drones might actually interact with. We'll dig into that a little bit more as we go. The whole group in this situation also begins to collaborate. Um, as we're working today and the chat is open, that's the situation as an example of the ways in which your students can become collaborators even as the instruction is live. Something that we're still growing in our ability to do is the ability to deliver and engage our students as we're asking those driving questions, thinking about real world problems, but also letting our students really share and converse in the chat, whether that's direct chat with you or direct chat in the whole group. The conversation, as the microphones are open, is moderated by you as an instructor, and the chat room is also moderated by either you as an instructor or by a co-instructor. After we are really dissecting this problem and thinking about the different parameters and different constraints that we might have in our real world problem, that's where we break out into our small group collaboration. Zoom has an amazing feature when we think about our small group breakout rooms, where we may have our whole class nested together and we break out into our small groups to do much more in-depth collaboration. And you as an instructor can pop in and pop out of those chat rooms. This becomes a great way to generate ideas. They start thinking about ways that we can solve problems, exchange ideas when we think about coding or how we want to set our physical drone up or a simulator drone up. After we are done with that small group collaboration time, what we'll do is we'll come back into our whole groups again, where we're able to share our ideas, take times with our students, either from their group representatives, or we may pull our students individually. We're explaining those ideas and explaining the prototyping and the thought processes and even the building that we may have started to do in those small group scenarios. And then that work from there becomes independent. Um, the instructor kind of steps back from the sage and the stage role. Now that our students understand their problem, they've been ideating, they've been working with students to brainstorm and to start with solutions. We step away from the live instructor role, and our students are kind of nose to the grindstone a little bit, but they're not completely turned off. You're there to float in and check in students via your chat. So that may be email, that may be messages through Google Classroom or whatever your LMS is. In that time where your students are working remotely, you're not completely disconnected there from them. You're there to answer and field those questions. And we know that becomes a little bit difficult because you're also negotiating all of your different classes and how your time constraints and commitments will look towards how you are engaged with all your different classes. Um, but that becomes something that we can block off time for and be available to our students. And after we're kind of doing that independent collaboration where students are working, they eventually submit their work, whether that's by email or a Google Classroom or our learning, our LMS, that becomes a chance for us to evaluate, to give that feedback. Mary, really good question. I'm using some jargon here. LMS, what does LMS mean? That's our learning management system. If you have ever used Moodle or Schoology or PowerSchool, Canva or Canvas at Canvas, those different platforms by which we can communicate to our students. Some of them have great booking options plugged in as well, where our students have accounts and they're able to check in and our parents are able to check in. That is a learning management system. We truncate that to LMS just to keep that extra second in our days by not saying LMS. Um, Integrating with LMS, Google Classroom is another example of an LMS. Um, gives us the ability to give our students feedback, prepare for the next lesson. So we create this lesson cycle that our students are able to engage with. So we can start from the beginning. And I'm going to open up the chat again a little bit. Don't want to rush. What's a real world problem that you can think of that our drones might be useful for solving? What's something that is a problem in our real world right now? Or it might be a problem that you just have that you would love to see your students develop a problem for. I'll take a break from speaking and I will let us jump in the chat and offer in some of your thoughts. Yep, Mary's right on it. Delivering items. That's a really, really good one. It's such a good one that there are multiple companies all over the world and in the US working on delivering items. UPS has a pilot program to deliver items. Thank God, because they need to get better. Uh, Amazon has been delivering items in small amounts around the US for a couple of years now actually. So we're seeing drone deliveries be an option for a lot of different companies. Oh, Doreen, really good one. Monitoring endangered animals. Absolutely. Traditional aircraft like helicopters are large, they're destructive, they're loud. They actually, unfortunately, emit lots of greenhouse gases. Drones are smaller, quieter, less destructive, they're electric. In a lot of situations, they're much, much better to that job for monitoring some of those endangered species. Red Cross distribution. Yep, Red Cross distribution, deliveries for medications, especially in a socially distanced world where we think about um, particularly vulnerable or particularly um, remote populations. Drone delivery becomes a really important thing. We've been seeing medical distributions in rural Africa for many years. There's a company called Wing that does that work. Um, oh, really good one from Doreen, roof inspections for my older home and neighborhood. In the United States of America, you can fly and operate your drone independently for commercial purposes if you get a drone license. It's called the FAA Part 107. It's extremely inexpensive. I think it's less than $30 to get a license. You can license all of your drones to do commercial work. Surveying wedding photography, roof work, attic work. My brother's in construction. He flies a drone for his construction business. Really, really good example. Oh yeah, really, really good one from Anita, I think it is. Um, Locating missing animals and people. Yes, we've been seeing law enforcement, emergency services, not only locating people. For example, out in California, there's infrared on the drones looking for people who may be caught in the fires, but actually larger drones that are powerful enough to actually airlift some of these people out of these situations. Really, really cool applications. You guys have some amazing, amazing ideas for the ways that we can use drones. Already some tremendous ideas. And when we think about engaging real world problems, what we're actually doing with our students is kind of what you've just done, engaging in this idea of citizen engineering. An engineer is just a professional problem solver. It's someone who uses science, technology, engineering, and math to solve problems that people have. And some of these things that we talked about, some of the ideas that you came up with are some of the problems that drone pilots are solving right now. Delivering essential and remote goods, doing things like even assistive protective devices, when we think about delivering goods or getting people and rendering aid. One thing that we've been seeing a little bit more experimentation with, another one of those applications that came out of science fiction is artificial pollination. We've been seeing for the last 10 years, more and more pollinators threatened here in the United States. That's become a real burden when we think about the agricultural sector and some of the food that we love to eat. There are experiments and companies working now to figure out ways to use drones to do the work that things like honeybees and hummingbirds and moths and butterflies are doing when they're pollinating different crops across the United States. Doreen says that one of her sons is a firefighter. Our county has drone teams that looks for bodies, people, and burning buildings. Absolutely right. Yep, classify classify with drones. Yeah, I think for the Department of Defense applications, the drone work is probably going to be a little bit more on the aggressive side. We're thankful that both of your sons are doing some good work using emerging technologies, and we're going to be seeing more and more real world problems that this technology is going to become viable solutions for. Really, really cool stuff to be done here with our students. So when we think about engaging our students with a real world problem, we have examples that we can pull from in our personal lives, from the world and from the news around us, that we can engage them with when we think about traditional lesson structure or even project-based learning. But as we go, what's going to be really important when we're working with any emerging technology, and in particularly drones and in computer science, is collaboration. Any work that your students do in STEM professions is going to require tremendous amounts of collaboration. And a great place for them to begin with learning how to collaborate is learning more how to use collaborative tools. That's going to be a skill set that continues to grow over the course of their lives. The more and more they use technology. We're seeing as a direct result of our students growing up as digital natives, that they're understanding how to use digital tools much more quickly and in more innovative ways than we could have ever used digital tools. We're seeing students use social tools like TikTok to make real political change. We've seen even TikTok have effects on elections here in the United States. So while the students love things like TikTok, I neither tick nor do I talk. It becomes important for us to think about the digital tools and the sharing tools that they'll be using in the classroom. Something as simple as learning how to effectively share their screen and communicate information with things like Zoom, Whiteboard, a specialist program. AWW is an Amazon whiteboard company. It's a specific company that makes a digital sharing tool through Amazon. ChemDraw or LA Text, things like being able to mark up whiteboards. Some of us may have worked with in the past Wacom tablets that just allow you to take a pen and digitally annotate things on a screen. those old school, not quite old school, but the overhead projectors now that are also digitized and allow us to interact with things on our screen, smart boards, learning how to use these technologies and collaborate effectively, it's a load on us as educators because we have to continue to learn these tools ourselves. But if we can learn these tools and teach these tools, we create students who are amazing collaborators. And that in and of itself sets them on a path that puts them ahead of students in many, many robust ways. Document collaboration also becomes a really, really powerful thing that our students are able to engage in. And this is something that's a little bit easier for them to grasp and a little bit easier for us as instructors to grasp. G Suites, that's Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, or our Office 65 suites. Whatever your school uses, whether it's Google or Office, it also gives our students the ability to collaborate in real time. What does that look like? That could be, instead of having your students take individual notes, you set up a class notes section real time using a Google slide, for example. Each student can have an individual slide that's just their specific slide for taking notes, and they can take notes throughout the course of the class. And throughout the course of the class, the slides just don't belong to them. Students can flip through different slides and compare notes and add thoughts. And that real-time document collaboration, when we think about the way we code and that we set up our different projects, becomes a really powerful tool, something that we can practice ourselves amongst our peers and with our kids at home, is how we can really make a huge change with multiple editors in a document at once. It can become a little bit unwieldy, but that's why it's important for us to continue to practice it as well. Also, as we are getting into the phase where we are elaborating and evaluating with our students, becoming masters of our learning management system becomes key. I cannot emphasize this enough. It is very, 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 that's three varies, very, very, very important that we become masters of learning the tools that allow us to communicate our assignments and instructions to our students. We can take things like notes and screenshots and 3D printing files and code, and we can upload these files directly into Google Classroom, into Canvas, into Blackboard, and Moodle, and allow them to be noted on, emailed, shared back and forth, put directly into our grade books when we even think about assessing our students. Our assessments can also live in our LMS. Continue to get professional development in that space. We know that you're already there, or that there's already a focus there. We know that your administrations are continuing to ask that of you. That's some of the good work that you can do, and that may be professional development that we ourselves at NextWaveSTEM continue to explore in the future as well. So lots of information. Hit you with a fire hose. Good thing there's a recording, right? But with the time kind of skipping and running away, the big question now becomes, how can we help you? How can we make your life a little bit easier with respect to virtual instruction, digital instruction with your students going forward? Well, the first thing, of course, is what you're doing right now. Our free PD series. We have PD scheduled until the first week of September, and I can guarantee you we're going to have PDs that extend beyond there. We'll be pushing out some emails and marketing with those PD dates in the next couple of weeks. But we are going to continue to try to address the needs that you might have as educators, and we're going to poll you as educators to think about what you need to be supported in and what we can develop for you as we continue to support you using emerging technologies. Our next PD next week is how to teach 3D printing remotely. If you're interested in 3D printing programs and how you can teach your students how to design for 3D, how to set up a 3D printer, how to actually engage in the engineering design process, that's something that you can come back next week and we're going to have a chance to talk a little bit more about. In addition to professional development, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're also licensing the NextWaveSTEM curricula. It's important for us to engage in curricula options that give hands-on learning experiences for those of us who are remote and in hybrid situations. Things are changing all over the place. Some of us are physically in school, so you want to be hands-on with your kids as much as you can be. Some of us are um, in hybrid situations where students are going to be coming in some days, are going to be remote other days, maybe virtual instructions on other days as well. Some of us are completely remote now until things change. Next Wave Student Curricula is designed to flex with what your teaching situation is. We have options that are with and without equipment, without the physical equipment for students who are distance learning. So visit us at nextwavestem.com, and or you can just email us and we can get you a little bit more information. Got a really good question here. Am I sharing the presentation with us after the session? The answer is absolutely yes. This presentation is being recorded. You're going to get a copy of the recording, and you're also going to get a copy of the slide deck. So don't worry about having to scribble down a whole bunch of notes. That's something that you can scribble on your slide deck when you download it after the presentation today. Oh, got another really good question. Any SQL work? Mary says, you're new to SQL, you're taking some intermediate classes right now. You're a programmer with C++ and Fortran. Mary, you are an educator after my own heart. I remember my C++ classes in undergrad. I would like to say that I had fun, but it was another time. Right now, NextWave STEM is not offering intermediate or upper level programming language, professional development, or courses right now. What we have done is an introductory computer science with a focus on artificial intelligence for our high school courses. I left that course out when I talked about our courses earlier on because it's a brand new offering. I'm really excited, and we're going to be doing a professional development session that's kind of an educational session for educators in the next few weeks on the computers and AI course. But that's something that we might look into a little bit later on, thinking about professional development for our more computer science focused educators. Really good question there. And we're saving our chat, so that's something that can push to our product team and we can start to consider for development. Thanks so much for asking about that, Mary. And we also, thinking about how NextWave STEM can help you, we're doing the professional development, we're licensing the curricula. That includes virtual training and in-person training for our Chicagoland residents. We're also really focused on our ability to be educators. NextWave STEM, historically, where we broke into the market was in direct education for students, both in school and out of school time. We're also providing virtualized education. For your in-school and out-of-school courses, if you just want us to come in and be the educator for the course so that your students are getting that taste of STEM, we are available to do that for you as well. Once again, reach out to us at nextwavestem.com. So I want to pause because we are quickly running out of time, but there may be all kinds of questions. I love it. You guys, Antoinette, Doreen, Mary, and Anita, you've just been jumping in with the questions. I wanted to make sure, because we did cover a lot, that you had a little bit of time. If you've got any other questions about NextWave STEM, about the drones, about coding, I would love to be an answer for you. So I will step back just for a moment. I'll go silent. And I would love to hear any questions that you might have. And there's no such thing as a bad question. Oh, there we go. Doreen asks, if the kids start this year, is it progressive enough to go into another semester of this year? Absolutely. We have something that we'll be able to share with you, and we'll make sure to connect you with our school partnerships manager, Jarrett McCarthy. What we have is an actual learning progression. We have our learning map that takes us through not just progressive levels within a specific technology, but also the opportunity to introduce other emerging technologies to students progressively as well. Our students might begin with coding and thinking about computer science that way, but may transition into thinking about STEM application and 3D printing and robotics as an adjoinder to the drones program as well. So you've got a lot of different options for you to find a really good fit as your students grow. Mary, would love to partner with you too. I think you and Jared have been exchanging some emails. I'll check in with him. He says, oh, Mary's in everything. So yeah, Mary, I know that I'm almost positive we've been talking. Doreen, do we follow ISTE standards? Yes, our programs are Common Core, Math, NGSS, ISTE aligned. So you'll be able to, in any of our lessons, see where the alignments are in those standards. Each lesson also comes with assessment, fairly short assessment following each lesson. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can click on over to nextwavestem.com in our resources section and actually see our free lessons. And there'll be a link to that resource as well in the follow-up email. All of those are amazing questions. Are there any other really good questions? Well, if you do happen to have more amazing questions, you can always reach out to us directly. Hello at NextWaveSTEM will get you a great response, but you can also email me, Desmond Martin. I'm the program coordinator once again, Desmond at nextwavestem.com. And we are active on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. As I said before, we're not ticking and we're not talking, but that's something we may do in the future. Mary, that's really good news that your pitch is in November. We can connect and make sure that you have the resources that you need to really make that pitch effective. We would love to work with you. And we would love to work with all of you, whether that's with making your STEM program more robust, or if that's just helping guide you along the way to becoming a more robust STEM teacher. We're here as a resource for you. But for all of you, thank you so much for joining us. Doreen, I know that you said it's pretty soggy down there in Georgia. Try to stay as dry as you can. I'm grateful that storms do eventually blow over. But for all of you, please stay safe, and we will see you in the next webinar. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.